Hi, it's Nicola Graham from Accelerate Informed Performance. Today we are joined with Mark Opar from VALD Health. Mark, you spent 10 years as a clinical physio before moving into strategy at now what is VALD as a global tech company. What made you step away from treating patients and what do you miss most about it?
Yeah. Firstly, thanks for having me, Nicola. I'm excited to get together and chat. So it was a combination of a few things, as it kind of typically is. I had some frustrations with the structure of the medical hierarchy. And I clearly remember a scenario where I'd been up in Brisbane while I was working part-time at VALD and still working clinically. And a patient who had a syndesmosis injury who was older and doing functionally quite well, but was anxious while I had been away, had gone back to her GP who'd ordered the MRI. It was a grade 3 AITFL sprain, referred onto the surgeon who told the patient that every time she took a step, her ankle would be slipping out every time and without an operation. And then post the operation, spending 45 minutes on a Monday night reassuring this patient that she could weight bear with her crutches and a cam walker and that her ankle was going to be okay, irritated me. But I also had the perception that with how the kind of medical hierarchy, at least in Australia, was, that it wasn't my place to say anything otherwise. And I'd started doing kind of 2 days a week with VALD while the company was growing and still doing that clinical work, like I mentioned there. But I think there's this old adage of no such thing as part-time work. And I found myself self-selecting into my part-time job over my clinical work, which is kind of it was like the first hint that, okay, maybe there's something here that's attracting me to the type of work. I had a good overview of how VALD was going with my brother's obvious involvement with the Nord board. And then as we started to implement a product team, the company chose to go with subject matter experts, and it was offered an opportunity to run one of our products. And I kind of knew that this might be an opportunity that I don't get too many more times in my lifetime. And it actually made me reflect on probably the previous opportunity, which I'd regretfully turned down. And I was a second year physio, but I'd done an exercise science degree prior and had worked with the elite junior Australian football competition. And one of our sports trainers at the club that I was working at there happened to be doing some work in the IPL. And it was pretty early in the days of the IPL, the Indian Premier League for those who are less okay with cricket. And he called me up one day and he said, "Oh, Mark, I've put your name forward." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, thanks, Derek. What have you put my name forward for?" I've put your name forward to like run the high performance program at the IPL club. Um, and incredibly, I said to Derek, and it was probably because I lacked a bit of self-belief as well, and I would have been in my mid-20s at that stage, and said, "Oh, like, Derek, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to take 10 weeks off work." Um, and I kind of look back at that now and think, man, what a crazy opportunity to have not even had a go at. So when this came up again, I thought, well, I need to give this a try. And then kind of lastly, like in my own mind, and it's a bit confronting, but I was an okay clinician. I wasn't outstanding. I wasn't a bad clinician. But like at that point in my life, there was some intangibles that just didn't make me great.
Yeah.
And I probably inherently knew that. And then so the opportunity came to have a go at something else. Because at that stage, if you're not a physio, what are you? There
Yeah.
weren't a lot of pathways there. This is kind of 2018. So then I took the chance. And then in terms of things I miss, if I'm honest, the things that I miss, I get in my day-to-day work anyway. Like I enjoy engaging with people. I like solving problems. And and maybe I'm better suited to dealing with software engineers than I am with injured patients. That certainly can't be excluded. So, and I don't think I'll go back. I truly feel like I've kind of more found my calling, which is great. And when I talk to younger people or people of any age these days, the first thing I wish upon anybody is that they're happy.
Yeah.
and I've found something that makes me happy, and that's fantastic. So yeah, it's a long answer for a first question, but
No,
I feel
that's
that's an
brilliant.
interesting story.
I think for those who are new to VALD and don't know the history, can we unpack that a bit more? Because you are one of the earliest employees, is that correct? What number do you think you were?
Well, the number's a controversial one actually, because I joined 2 days a week when our headcount would have been less than 15 globally.
Okay.
Um, but my employee number is employee number 38, and several of the people in our organisation are amused by and have heard this story often. But so I'm 38, and that's when I went full time.
Okay.
But I obviously joined early, and I obviously had insight from David, who co-created the device or the Nordboard with Dr. Anthony Shield. So it kind of started out of that in terms of the background. Two researchers wanted to find a way of quantifying eccentric hamstring strength with a blend of the pros of an isokinetic dynamometer and the pros of I call a field grade device, which is
Mm.
at that point handheld dynamometry, and to also address some of the cons of those two options as well. So they wanted something that was able to quantify eccentric qualities, but they wanted it to be portable, quick and easy, and usable by most people, but also had the clinical qualities of being valid and reliable as well. So they did that as part of my brother's PhD.
Okay.
Um, um, some really interesting insights came out of his study and subsequent ones from Matt Bourne and Ryan Timmons. And then the university, they were involved in a university kind of almost like an incubator at the university for PhD students. And at the end of the kind of the PhD, the university kind of takes the product to market and sees if they
Mm.
commercialize it. And two best mates, Laurie Malone and Sam James, kind of took an interest in it. Sam is an industrial designer and built the prototypes of the Nordboard that was used for David's PhD. So he kind of knew a bit about the product, was entrepreneurial in mindset anyway. He was a really good swimmer, but he'd actually created a device to help kind of buoyancy for swimmers when training. So, had this kind of way of thinking and thought there was an opportunity there. I think the university were maybe hesitant at giving these two best mates an opportunity to run with it, but they did. And they had an audacious goal of, I think, of being able to embed, I think it was 200 Nordboards within 5 years.
Okay.
And they'd hit that within the first 12 months.
Oh, wow.
So things went well pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And from there, it's kind of snowballed into multiple other devices. Some that we've acquired, some that we've built in-house. But I think one of the key things that we have done well when considering a device and whether we build or buy, because there's pros and cons of each of those, but it's always been about addressing a problem of our clients. It's
Yeah.
never been about something that we thought was really clever. And we see many companies that maybe don't do so well that absolutely love their product, but it doesn't actually address a real world problem. And that's something that VALD has done tremendously. That's included obviously bringing, force plates and force decks in particular into the VALD umbrella that basically made force plates usable for a physiotherapist like myself who
Yeah.
wasn't a lab tech, couldn't write script, and was probably intimidated by them a little bit. But the user friendliness of it, once you get over the little bit of apprehension at the start, has it opens the eyes to clinicians in a really dramatic way. And the second part of the story was that obviously we made our initial splash in elite sport, but we typically talk with strength and conditioning, sports science, and the medical team. And often the medical team members would say, well, I've got a clinic that I actually part own as well. How do I go about getting one of these bits of equipment in my clinical setting? And that was probably the sort of the first moment for Laurie and Sam is to consider, the next vertical, which is, VALD Health, and the move into that. And that's certainly, that's just continued to grow year on year. So it's not an abbreviated story. I could talk for a long time about the VALD story because it's a pretty cool story. I actually think it'll be a tremendous TV show. I joke regularly that I've written 30 seasons, but we might have to wait a few years because startup life is maybe not safe for television sometimes, but it's a great. The VALD story is a tremendous story. But coming back to what it distills down to is the success is hard work, but an understanding of the client and an obsession with the client and their problems. I
Yeah.
think.
Problem solving is obviously a huge aspect, I would say, of health and performance from sport as well. And practitioners that kind of keep that in mind, I think, do really well when they transition out into different roles as well. And obviously, you are a practitioner by background. I've had contact as a clinic owner and just generally with a lot of your, like, I think you call them BDMs, but they come from that practitioner background. How do you think that differs for VALD strategy, where you can wear that practitioner hat, talk the lingo and the communication of what a physio, S&C, medical doctor's problems are, and then translate that into kind of commercial strategy for the business? That's very different from if you come from, I'd say, a typical MBA background or a typical business background. Has that been conscious or unconscious within VALD's growth?
Oh, it's been 100% conscious, and we do things that many probably think is atypical and goes against the playbook. I'll get back to that question, but it kind of reminds me of the second device, which was the force frame now, but initially the groin bar. Some people in the kind of inner circle early recommended against building that, and Laurie and Sam just backed themselves and did it, and that was kind of the next brick in the wall. But the approach of who we bring in as subject matter experts into commercial roles has been 100% deliberate, and there's probably been a bit of a journey with that we might not have started there straight away. Like, we had 2 lawyers and industrial designer are the 3 co-founders, and they certainly aren't traditional salespeople either. But our approach is to be conversational, and our kind of go-to-market strategy is educating on the value of high quality objective assessment or evaluation, and to be able to kind of get into the details of that with different professionals. You kind of need to be a professional. You can learn enough to be dangerous, but as soon as it kind of pivots, like off a kind of, let's call it a script, you just flounder. And Australian health professionals, at least in allied health, and I am certainly one of them, are pretty unhealthy cynics, I think. But they would sniff that out as well of someone kind of working off a script who gives kind of cookie cutter answers rather than putting their problem solving hat on, applying clinical reasoning, or working on if it's a strength coach, talking to them about their problem and kind of working on solutions. People kind of sense that authenticity. And it was one of the parts that I think self-selected me into walking away from clinical life, is that it was a lot of fun walking into, the most elite sporting organizations in Australia and problem solving with very smart human beings who spend a lot of their time thinking about these problems. So it was really enjoyable. But yeah, and I think a lot of our staff get that enjoyment out of it. That's where they get the clinical itch gets satisfied, is that they go into a clinic or a sporting team and they have to still use their skills to help offer the appropriate solution to the problem that the person in front of us is trying to address, in our case, when we're in a conversation via technology.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've seen that. And you may have, you probably were one of the earliest companies doing that, but I would say a lot have taken that approach as well that I've seen from kind of tech. So I see and speak to a lot of practitioners who are looking to move into use their practitioner knowledge, their practitioner networks, the trust that they've developed within that, and then move into kind of more commercial roles as well. So yeah, I think you've created a bit of a playbook there that has shown success.
Yeah, and I think the other really nice part, there's a few interesting components to that actually, is that it has given an alternative for someone like myself who didn't dislike what I did. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. But I didn't really have what felt like a viable alternative. And like in Australia, the average career of a physio is 8 years, and you study for 4. to get there. So to kind of create that opportunity has actually been really nice and very satisfying. And equally, like being a clinician's hard as well. Like there's a lot of extra work involved that is unpaid, but an expectation of your role in clinical life. And we as a company and other technology companies probably reap the benefit of clinicians like seeking an alternative. The unusual thing is that if we execute some of the things that we have in our roadmap, we actually might dry up our talent pool because we think we'll make the lives of clinicians better. So it's this kind of interesting conundrum that, we might be having to divert to traditional MBA sales types because clinicians love their job again, which would be great too.
Yeah, but I agree. Like having been a physio myself, there there wasn't like a traditional career path in some respects. You get to a point where it's like leadership or management, but you still may be holding a clinical, and the demands are still high. So yeah, I think it has opened up. I'd like to just go back slightly when you were talking around the links with the university, because it's been interesting. I would love to know how long that link with the university stayed with VALD strategy, really, because we're seeing that in different ways geographically. And I want to kind of give an example of Ireland have done some fantastic work with the sports tech companies coming out of through the backing with Enterprise Ireland and then with universities. That doesn't seem to happen in the same way in the UK, I would say, to link up that commercial part. So how long did the university stay as part of VALD's story, and at what point did you kind of branch off? And because you still initially called yourself a startup, I think that's I think you're very much in the scale up kind of side now.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of cool things about being a startup that we probably tried to hang on to for a while. I agree. Yeah, Ireland do seem to do a fantastic job with nurturing and cultivating that kind of, let's call it an ecosystem. I never felt in my roles the influence of the university at all.
Okay.
There was certainly like someone from the university was on our board in our kind of first and probably second versions of our boards between different kind of phases of capital raising. But yeah, I probably can't give an intelligent answer there other than to say that I have never felt it.
Okay.
And sometimes, like when things are going well, like why would you kind of try to put your hands on the wheels and provide influence too much anyway? Because it seems like the guys have a reasonable idea of what they're doing, and to just let them go until proven otherwise. So yeah, it hasn't been particularly imposing, I would say.
Fair enough.
Which is cool. Just lets you do fun things, that's some of the best things about a startup where, you get to scale up. We're starting to slow down. That's just the nature of it. You just get big enough that you have to.
Yeah, yeah. So going back to that, the origins being within pro sport and then that move into health. How did that happen from the point of view of, we see quite a lot, and we talk about other companies that have had that credibility within elite sport and that halo effect because as you say, it's quite a cynical environment. Adoption can be hard. You'll be tested to a high degree. That would have been like a conscious strategy to then move into healthcare. But obviously you've still got your roots very much in both pockets. Where do you see more growth happening now within the business?
Oh, look, certainly from a growth perspective, there's more growth in the health vertical. It's just a volume thing ultimately.
Yeah.
The decision was deliberate, and part of it was a little bit about the health professionals that we talk to at elite clubs who go work in the private landscape as well as either a clinician themselves or a business owner in some instances. And then there's the second part of it was kind of almost forced on us in that Australia actually don't have a lot of elite sporting teams, and we've probably got there's probably 4 or 5 professional leagues, maybe 6 now, and certainly at that point, who thought that our products were viable for them. We're starting to filter down to lower grades in Australia now, which is particularly exciting. But we'd kind of exhausted our market in Australia, and we're Australian based, so most of our staff were here. And the only way through growth through professional sport was like introducing more products. But then there was this offering in the health sector where do we think there's something there? Laurie was a very firm believer that there was, and we just kind of pushed on with it in that, no, we believe that this is viable, and that the convenient thing for us was, I probably understate what we do, but I use the phrase to simplify and distill it, is that right now we measure strength, movement, function, and balance like at a lab grade level in a clinically usable way. But that didn't really differ much from what they were measuring in pro sports. So the qualities that we were trying to quantify aren't that different from an athlete worth $80 million or a grandmother about to have a knee replacement. The grandmother probably doesn't do a counter movement jump, but she's probably going to squat or do a sit to stand, and her knee extension strength probably matters. And that's not too dissimilar in terms of what we capture. The part that is more challenging is the workflow matters in elite sport. The workflow matters everywhere. It just matters a lot in health and a lot more. And friction is just more painful in the health setting than I think in elite sports. So that's it's not been an easy transition. We had to grind for a while, but we've kind of got through that. And most of our new business now, or a majority of our new business now, is in health.
Yeah.
But it's just been the refinement of workflow rather than what we do at our core. Has been
that makes sense.
The main difference. Yeah. And then the other part that we did do to add to that was we added a digital health arm as well. So, and that the digital HEP platform, that was my baby. That was the one that I moved on to as full time, to be able to kind of complement your objective data, and then to be able to provide intervention, which for a lot of our prospective clients at that point was exercise. To have those housed in the one environment was an important point of difference too.
Yeah. You talk about the kind of workflow, but I assume there's also been a pretty high education piece into healthcare. Like when you come from elite sport, data is the norm. Like as we know in private healthcare, and definitely in the UK, there would be data points within a business, but they wouldn't have been analyzed in the same way. There wouldn't have been the expectation or even the want of objective. Like objective was the equivalent of a Oxford muscle score, where you're just manually that was classed as objective. It's not objective when you really analyze it. So there's probably been, I would have thought, as well as the workflows which differ across every business, alongside that, the education piece from any practitioner really that is working in there, but predominantly I would say physios, as to what objective data actually and quantifiable data actually looks like in good practice.
Yeah. Oh, it's a huge piece, and it ties back nicely to how our approach has been about being educational, that we know that we need to go and educate the profession on some of these, let's call them qualities that might actually be intimidating for people when they hear them the first time. And I still remember when I started, and I probably did it as well. And at that point, I was probably still operating off a bit of a script because I was a bit intimidated by forced X. That we would tell people proudly that there were 200 metrics in the counter movement jump. And that's the last thing that a health professional wants to hear after they've just been made to maybe feel a bit foolish after hearing about concentric impulse and trying to rack their brain back to biomech in maybe first year university and what impulse is. So yeah, there's been a dramatic uplift in that. And like we've had great success. Our practitioner guides have been probably something that we would have loved to have done 10 years ago, but we just didn't have the bandwidth. Like you're just running the whole time at that point. But they have been a tremendous initiative of ours, and I think our approach, because there's more options out there now because of the success. Like, we've kind of forged the way,
Yeah.
and we're happy to be the leader with educating the market on a thought process that like a rising tide raises all ships. Like, that's been our thought process, that you can download our guide. You don't have to be. It's not kind of ringed in. You have to be a VALD client to access a practitioner guide. And then the next phase of that has been VALD Academy. Not everyone has time to go and read a 70-page practitioner guide. Most people are happy to consume information like we're doing here. It's 10-minute clips on how to use the device, what impulse means, how rate of force development is collected. So it has been one of the really important pillars in getting traction in the health market, I think, because you're right,
Yeah.
and because it's a time thing as well. Like the elite sports staff, sometimes the athletes are training, and not all of them necessarily need to be out there on the field. So they're busy, but they have time to dedicate themselves to other things. Where, like, if I pick up my iPad and I do a squat and it tells me that my eccentric impulse was this, and my patient asks me, is my eccentric impulse good? And you're not sure what it is. It's a pretty uncomfortable scenario. So
Yeah.
that's why we've had to take that approach, because it's not people's lack of want to upskill. It's a lack of time in many instances.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we also know, sometimes changing practitioners' practice is challenging. Are you therefore, do you take an approach of educating new practitioners into the market? So actually getting them at university stage and introducing the technology as part of now university training?
Like, the equipment is embedded at a lot of universities around the world.
Yeah.
So certainly it is exposure, and to be frank, the universities need to take some credit for that themselves, that they're kind of leading the way. And there's different examples of those doing
Yeah.
it better than others around the world. But 100%, that is part of what we do. The challenge is that the university student is not the buyer for probably a few years. So
Yeah.
you need to service both ultimately. But it's and we've seen it in different markets around the world, where large organizations who were resistant came back to the table because they were trying to hire, and the question from students was, do you have a handheld dynamometer and force plates in your clinic? And
Yeah.
then they were missing out on talent.
Yeah.
And so
It
that was
becomes the expectation at that point.
yeah, and
And
it
you've
has,
raised
and that's the
the
way it's
standard.
gone.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I was saying to someone the other day that, like, when I started 7 years ago, the early adopter innovators were going with our equipment to stand out. It's now at the point where you stand out if you don't.
Yeah.
Which is helpful for a technology company, an objective technology company, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to add to that, there were definitely times where I would see letters from orthopedic doctors, and it wouldn't say, I'll see you in 6 weeks' time with your strength test. It would be, I'll see you in 6 weeks' time with your VALD scores. So they were
Yeah.
specifically naming the brand that they wanted. Obviously, if it had been done with some different technology, they may not have known. But I think that's a real an acknowledgement of the brand position that it's become, that when that you get named as the specific provider of that. So it
Yeah,
just
yeah,
is
it
in
is
line.
it's very humbling, actually, when you
Yeah,
hear those stories.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen overnight either.
No, well, that's the thing. People see the overnight success, but
Mm,
don't see all the hard work that happens behind that.
yeah.
Just talking then, you're talking about like integration and adoption. And I think also when you think about the elite sport teams, ROI may not be as important because it's the expectation and there's budgets maybe looked at in a different way. When it comes to healthcare clinics, I'm going to give an example. When we implemented AI notes, the companies would actually sell it to us that this will give you time to see more patients. It didn't. It made the lives of the physios happier, and it also meant that they could actually have a conversation looking at someone in their eyes rather than typing away. When it comes to ROI on force plates and dynamometers, it's like, how do you communicate that? What becomes, and how do you see clinics that get the best out of the technology from an engagement perspective with patients?
Yeah. On a plug for our VALD Academy, Carl Goodman from Athletes Authority has done a masterclass recently on there, which I would point people towards. It is
Okay.
a tremendous and the ROI question, and it was common very early on. And interestingly, there you've kind of spoken to some of the indirect measures of ROI of AI scribes, have been able to look someone in the face, not have to stay around after work. And it's not improving like direct productivity, but it's indirectly leading to happier humans,
Mm,
which, the indirect cost of an unhappy human that leaves means, and you'll know better than myself, Nicola, what it costs to hire talent, to train talent, and then and you don't get it right all the time either. So, like that, quantifying it is difficult, but some kind of appreciate that. And there's a few bits of indirect ROI like that I think are underappreciated as
mm,
well. And like patient engagement, I also think is another one that is similar in that vein as well. That you probably get a transfer over to direct ROI with patient engagement, but sometimes patient engagement might correlate better with a better outcome, which
yeah.
generates someone who's a better advocate for your business. But then there's the direct ones, and one of my favorite terms, and I borrowed it from one of our really early adopters, who I still remember at one of our early VALD cons. He said that pain is the currency of rehab, and I asked a question. I said, Chris, isn't that what we're trying to get away from? Because when pain is the currency of rehab, that's when they discharge. Like they're pain free, they're finished, and we all know that. And at least in Australia, I think physiotherapists have had a reputation for holding on for patients longer than they should. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. And I rather think that we haven't been able to quantify why someone is not ready to discharge because we're using the Oxford scale, which I came to learn recently was actually a scale designed for neurological patients.
Oh,
And when I learnt it, it was fascinating because 0 to 3 are not healthy people, really.
yeah, yeah.
Like
They
grade
can't
4
lift
and
against
5. So
gravity. Yeah.
yeah, so you've really got when you're talking to this patient who's had a sore knee about that their strength is really important to change, and they start at a grade 4 plus, let's say, and their pain settles potentially quite quickly. And then you measure them next time, and probably because there's less inhibition going on, their pain's at a grade 5. There's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
You can kind of understand why that person thinks they don't need intervention anymore. I'm not going to say solely physio because there's lots of people who are able to modulate strength, but that ability to shift that mindset from pain is when my journey is finished to certain criteria, and we're seeing it more in some presentations than other. But it's been particularly helpful, I think, in enabling that for people to kind of join the dots. And at that point, realistically, with where our systems are priced, if you're able to elicit, even with our force plates, not even thinking about the dynamo, if you have one patient come back a week for an extra session that's been justified by data, you've covered the cost. For the case of a dynamo, it's need one patient a month,
Mm,
and there's many other mechanisms that are used within our ecosystem which we've built out for the health user. And normative data is the other one. Is that okay? Well, I'm now symmetrical. You've told me I've got to get back to being level with my injured side. I'm off. I'm better now. Now we're at the point where you can be symmetrical in the 20th percentile for your age and sex at birth.
yeah.
And the beauty of it is, particularly for a younger professional, and probably thinking to myself a little bit as a professional as well, who probably wasn't able to kind of connect the dots of having that almost inherent thing that some really successful clinicians have, is to be able to say, well, are you happy in the 20th percentile? Show me a person on the planet that is happy to be there. So that's certainly part of the story that we've had to build upon, because it matters. Like, the people who
Yeah.
are making the decisions run off small margins. Like, elite sport will go with our equipment in the search of a percent difference, because that's the difference between success and failure.
Yeah.
Like, a percent difference in someone's margin in a business that they own in allied health, like it's in some cases it's a pretty healthy percentage of their margin, and if you're eating into that margin and not being able to give back, that's a problem for those businesses. So that's why it matters so much, and
Yeah.
why we've focused our efforts on that, and we've produced a practitioner's guide to ROI as well, and unashamedly do that because it's so important in the decision making process.
It is. It is. And we've touched on, and I think it might be worth unpacking whether you've had any more success, because this is a conversation we've had over the years. But some of that, some of that pressure on financial ROI for the business is because of the low remuneration that comes from third-party providers and insurance companies.
Mm.
You've obviously had success within elite sport, the practitioners, the business owners, the universities. Have we managed to
Mm.
bring to the table yet insurance companies, and how do you
Ah,
think they're understanding the advances, and where the market and the technology and the wish for data and performance has gone to? Do you think they're open
mm.
to that conversation yet?
They are. It's we are making progress. It's just slow, and like and some of the people in I can't remember what it was called, but the group that you were part with some of the leading private practice clinics
MSAPN,
in
yeah,
London. Yeah, I do a fantastic job with that advocacy piece as well, because at the end of the day, um, the payer needs to see the tangible benefits. So we're getting there with that. They're also getting on board with, the population level data that we have available at our
yeah,
disposal as well. So, yeah, we've progressed. Have we progressed as far as we want to? No. But like, I believe we'll get there. And my ultimate aspiration is that if I'm doing an assessment with someone and I'm visually assessing their squat, and I'm using the Oxford scale to measure their quad strength and their other anti-gravity muscles, versus someone who's using a dynamometer, who's using a set of force plates, I think that person deserves to be reimbursed more, because they are delivering a better quality of service. So, like, I think it will get there, but they're big, slow-moving beasts. They're complex industries. There's geographic differences, even when you look at mainland Europe and how the different models, and we'll include the UK in it as well, even though they've chosen to exclude themselves. The UK, France, Belgium, and Holland, like, the way their health systems run are all very different. So it just makes it hard as a single vendor
yeah,
to be able to advocate across all those different markets and different geographies, not even thinking about the United States market and that reimbursement model.
yeah.
Um, while we're also, yeah, scaling a business now. We're not starting a business, but
No,
yeah, because there's lots of other stuff to do. So it's yeah, it is, yeah, and we will continue to advocate for the industry as well, because we believe in it. And that's the great thing about working for VALD, is that the things I talk about, like, I believe in it, and it's not even, I haven't had to kind of come to terms with convincing myself on it. Like, I truly believe in it, and
yeah.
that's a great place to be as well.
Yeah. And as you say, I think it's that indirect, because what we're talking about here is you've changed the standard of practice and you've elevated that. And as you say, it's now becoming the norm. And therefore, those that aren't doing it will question it. I also think it coincides with a time in society where the expectation, like, if you wear a wearable, if you're tracking things on Strava, Garmin, like,
Yeah.
and then you go to a physio and there's no data, it
Mm.
just, it looks out of place now. We're in that
Mm.
realm. So
Mm.
Yeah, we have a more educated health consumer, I would say, on a general basis. Not across all, but that means that I'd say the expectations have changed drastically. Just briefly touching on, when you do see real success at a healthcare level of the adoption and the use of the technology, what
Mm.
changes? What do you actually see change?
Well, I think one of the really one main one that we're starting to see is happier staff, and we wouldn't have anticipated that from the get go, because they're starting to expect it as well as you mentioned. Like everybody has access to data now, um, and then you come into a clinic and you know it just doesn't feel modern, and it doesn't feel like the profession that you're working is modern and is potentially antiquated, which nobody wants to associate themselves with that, particularly younger people. So that's certainly one of them. And then the aspect of it is when it's been successful is that it's delivering significant monetary value to your organization, and it's actually making a business owner's life better and better on both fronts. Happier staff, better financial picture, but it takes like you just don't sort of put it in there and it will come either. Like the people who do it well still run good systems and still we help, but they drive the implementation. And we I still remember one of our earlier enterprise trials, and we've learned from that, and we recommend away from it in that they really liked the concept of this, let's get away from pain being the currency of rehab. And they chose to put the equipment during the trial into underperforming clinics. And what do you know? Technology did not help the underperforming clinic because there's other things going on there. I think AI has been exciting in some of those things. I do think over time AI it will still continue to expose the lazy, the unmotivated. It'll just maybe take a few more layers to identify that, but it's not the sole answer. Like you've still got to get your processes in place to enable it to thrive, I think, as well. And there's different ways of implementing process. Some mandate that you have to use it. There's certainly several examples of that where it's just you need to use a piece of measurement technology with each new consult that comes in. These are our batteries, versus others where the staff are free range chickens, and us physios are an opinionated lot and don't like being necessarily railroaded into those things as much.
Yeah.
So, but then it's still implementing a framework around that, and it's finding someone to own it and champion it
Yeah.
is always really critical. Because we'll be there to hold the hands, but we can't hold the hands of people who don't respond to phone calls and emails either.
Yeah.
So you do need those drivers, and I've seen that done well in that some groups will they basically have people are designated as owners of it as
Yeah.
well, and that can either be post the introduction of it, or they're the ones that advocate for it anyway. But
Yeah.
that's probably the things that I've observed over the years that have been linked to success.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still interested in behavior. The thing I'm really starting to think about now is behavior change as
Okay.
well, because we educate people on the value of it, but we still need to change people who are set in their ways, and that's hard, even if they're educated. So I think that's probably one of the frontiers that I'm thinking about at the moment. And I think we're well placed. Like physios and allied health professionals are well placed because we're agents of change anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that I'm mulling with over at the moment.
And let's expand that further. Well, you mentioned like the roadmap for VALD. Are you able to tell what is going on over the next kind of few years?
No, I probably can't. I'll say like that. Like it is a roadmap for a reason. Uh, Making practitioners' lives better
Yeah.
would be probably one of our North Stars, though. And
Okay.
that's vague. There's a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
of different ways to be able to do that. What I will say is that it's an exceptional exceptionally exciting time to be involved in technology at the moment, and probably it's an exceptionally exciting time to be alive at the moment. Really, like we're in the midst of the most probably transformative or accelerated transformative moment in history at the moment. So there's incredibly exciting things happening really rapidly, which we're hoping to be a part of.
And for those listeners who are early in their technology careers, development of
Hmm.
businesses, there's always mistakes along the way. Are there any that you would want to highlight?
Oh, oh wow. Um, I don't know. With my role now, I don't know if I can talk to mistakes
Learning.
that I've made that necessarily translate over to the audience. So the one would be that thinking that technology will right poor behaviours.
Yeah.
Because so we will now actively recommend against that. Like if we've got someone wanting to run a multi-site trial, we suggest that that's not a good idea. Like that was clearly a mistake because that trial was unsuccessful, unsurprisingly, because it didn't move the needle as they had hoped for. Um, as a person kind of working within the ecosystem now, I don't want to say impatience is unhelpful because you still need to move quickly. Like there is that element of failing fast,
Yeah.
but sometimes you pay the price for making short-term decisions. And that's probably not a bad bit of advice to clinicians and business owners. It's hard. Like the short-term easy option is that for a reason because it looks really attractive.
Yeah.
But eventually over time it gets you.
Yeah.
And technology, it's no more the case than in technology. And I know when I used to work more closely with the engineering team than I do now, I was very lucky to have a couple of really gifted people that they nurtured me. There's no doubt about that. And the question, like when I would write up a specifications document, let's call it a business plan, to be relevant to your listeners, and they would call out parts that they thought were bad ideas or that were complex. And one of the key bits that we would always talk about would be, how long is it going to take me if we decide to do this now? If I'm uncertain, like sometimes it would just be an example. I don't care. I need that. We're going to do it. And if that leaks timeline, so be it. I'm going to back my common sense as someone who's lived it every day. Versus when I'm not sure if we should definitely do it, I would then ask, if I wait 18 months to have it proven out that we should do it, what's the time cost then?
Yeah.
Because if they would say, if you do it now and it takes two weeks extra, and they say if you do it in 18 months and it's going to take 3 months, like that was always very informative. So it's trying to understand the trade-off between short-term sugar hit versus a more patient approach.
Yeah.
It's very easy to do when you join the company at the stage I did when we were kind of up and running. Like if you're starting a business and you've got a business loan, and which is like what it was like at the start of VALD. Like you've got to make some short-term decisions, and we rebuilt our whole software architecture probably 4 years in, and it took a long time.
Yeah.
And our CEO would quite often joke with my boss that software that was built by subcontractors sold a lot of Nord boards and force frames. And the point being that like sometime you have to take that short-term path for the benefit of your business as well.
Yeah.
So I've waffled a lot there, but I
No,
think it's
it's
something to
good.
ponder philosophically.
And there's so many different aspects to it now, isn't there? Because you've got the hardware side of the business, you've got the software side of the business, you've got the education, you've got the academy. Like there's so
Mm,
many aspects of the moving beast that VALD has grown
yeah,
into now. Um,
yeah.
Going from that kind of treating individual patients to being involved now in the strategy of what is a global tech company, which gave you more satisfaction? Where do you see the future?
Yeah, for me personally, and I think it's the key that it's personally, that what I do now delivers more satisfaction for me. And I think there's an inherent element to that. Like I don't think I chose that to be the case. It just was. Um, and then to like in terms of kind of impact and the like of that, like that, I also think is very personal. Like I didn't go into it thinking. I remember it was pitched at me that I'd be able to have a larger impact, and it didn't. That initially didn't attract me. I just wanted to solve cool problems and make things
Yeah.
better. That was my mindset. I mean, it is very satisfying though when we look at our usage and we look at our client count. We're having an immense impact, and we're changing the way that things are done in practice. Like that's infinitely satisfying. But I didn't like that's probably still not the thing that satisfies me. I just like doing the things that interest me, and that's why I come back to almost the start is that the thing I wish for people is for them to be happy, and this just happens to be what makes me happy. In terms of the future, we've already changed the world in how human qualities are assessed, and we have, and that's unfair. We've made it accessible.
Mm,
And to probably borrow a term that was in vogue 3 or 4 years ago, we've democratized it.
yeah.
We've made it usable for everybody, realistically. Like getting back, like a free digital exercise platform. There's no one in the world that can't use that if you have internet.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's a good
I
platform.
firmly, and I firmly believe if we deliver on the next things that are in our roadmap, that will change the world again, uh, possibly more significantly than what we've already done as well. Which that's real. I am really excited about that impact because it's again, it comes back to something that I'm excited about and interested in as well.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that it's going to be impactful.
Yeah. Mark, I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much. It's taken us a while to get here, but as a
Yeah.
user of Valve and follower of the company for many years, it's been great to be able to kind of unpack some of the journey. So, yeah, thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you. I love the questions. It was great to be. It made me reflect, which was good. We don't often do that very often, so
No.
it was really nice. Thanks, Nicola.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mark.